It sounds so simple, but if we keep that as the goal, at the end of the day, this client is going to be happy. And it would be a small little job. The big picture is he's happy. He's going to tell Brad how happy we made him. Brad's going to be like, all right, and, I can keep using Eric on these jobs. And now I'm going to work with Brad on all these huge, amazing projects for years to come.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. We have Eric Auffant on with us. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Brad. Glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So, it's funny. We've known each other for a long time. I consider ourselves, I can't say we're young anymore. And the reason I'll say that is funny. We had a Lux Connect breakfast and I couldn't stop laughing when, what they do at this, Lux magazine, they put together a bunch of professionals. We get up, we kind of give a little 5-10 a minute, bio and outcome. And he stood up and, Eric's like, when I used to come to these things, everyone's like, you're talking about how long you've been in the business and you're kind of, 20 plus years. And, people would look at you and be like, oh, you're so young. And you're like, people don't say that anymore. They just say, wow, that's a lot of experience.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't get those same, I wouldn't say backhanded compliments. Now it's just like, oh yeah, you have a lot of experience. There's no more like, there's no way you can be that old. I don't get those jaw drops anymore. So, but it's all right. That's all right. I'll take the experience.
Well, what's funny about that? It's like, there's something to be said that like wears on you, right? I mean, not to get political, but it's funny. You always see these presidents when they come into office and then kind of, after they've been in office, when they come out, the amount of stress and, there's something to be said about construction too, right? How much it can wear on us. As you look at your career now, and maybe before going back to the beginning, what are some of the things you've realized now that maybe help with, your operating procedures, maybe the way you run your business, maybe the way when you're working with a GC such as me, Eric, and you're like, you just have a much better understanding of how to communicate expectations so that the process runs better?
Not to sound too cliche, but it is experience and dealing with, especially in the custom home market, you're dealing with so many different personalities. And so I've been doing this for 27 years now. And I used to, at certain points, think, well, I've dealt with every kind of client there is, the type A and the type B and the micromanager. And I felt I've dealt with everyone because I've dealt with thousands of clients. And then I turn around and there's a totally different type of person I never knew existed. And so the older and more experienced I get, the more I learn that I really don't know. So, if I could go back and tell my younger self anything, I would just say, hey, keep learning, don't get too cocky and know there's always more to learn. There's always more to grow. And that's something that I had to learn over time. And I'm still learning over my years in the business. And then that way I can make myself more valuable to a GC like you. But you could buy shades from so many different places. So my challenge is to, show my value, present my value to you, to your clients, and try to, build a relationship based on that. And then continually, try to stay consistent and keep that relationship, even more importantly.
It's funny you say that because there's this fine balance. I know when I was young in my career starting out, you need to be really curious about, the process and asking questions, understand, from a GC perspective, what our trade partners are dealing with, how can we better be a resource? But then there's this fine line where you don't want to look unintelligent or you don't know what you're doing, right? How do you balance that, especially from your perspective where you are integrating, you're working with multiple vendors, not just the GC, and coordinating with them, from framing, electrical, automation, even drywall, depending on if these are pocketing shades. I mean, there's a lot of people that are, involved with you. And, how does that work for you to kind of build credibility with them, but at the same time not seem like you don't know what you're doing?
So it's definitely a balancing act, like he said. And there's different levels to it because, look, I'll be honest, not all GCs are equal. So when I meet a GC, especially a superintendent, who's specifically involved for that job, and that superintendent is kind of a micromanager and on top of you, Some people hate that. I love that because that means he's going to be on top of the integrator. He's going to be on top of the electrician. He's going to be on top of the designer. He's going to be on top of the drywall guy, like you said. So I know I don't have to constantly call all these other trades and become, I'm not a superintendent. So it's great when a superintendent actually does that job and manages the project because I know everyone else is going to be held accountable. So as long as I do my part and I show up, and don't get me wrong, I communicate with all those other trades, but it's hard for me to tell an integrator, you better be here at this day at this time, otherwise this is not going to get done. Whereas the superintendent kind of has the power to do that. So if we have a superintendent who's really on top of people, it makes our job so much easier. So I don't mind the micromanaging. That's what they're there for, to manage the project. On the flip side of things, you might get a superintendent who's kind of, he's just there and around. And we just have to make sure we cover our end and communicate a little extra with all of the parties involved. So maybe I reach out to that designer once a week and letting her know, hey, here's where things stand right now. Maybe I check in with the framers and say, hey, did you guys finish framing those pockets, so that I can run by and take a look. So, we can't just pick and choose and say, no, we only want to work with this builder or that architect. So we kind of have to cater, or at least I've chosen to cater our business to everyone and try to, make ourselves valuable and fit in with every different builder, architect, designer, and what have you.
Are you guys selling retail? Like, do you work direct with the customer?
Oh, sure. All the time. I mean, our business comes from 5 different sources. So there's direct homeowners who find us and get referrals, and we do their neighbor's house, and then their parents' house, and then their sister's house, and then their old best friend who moved back in the townhouse. Those are the best because they're getting your name from someone they already trust. So you already have some built-in trust there, and those are great. But then a lot of our business, as you know, comes from trade partners. So architects send us some stuff, the ones that want to get involved with those finishes beforehand. Some do, some don't. They leave that to the builder. So some builders will reach out to us when it comes down to framing and wiring and things like that. We get involved with the builder a lot of time. Some builders do, some builders don't. They say, let's let the designer handle that. And then sometimes we get designers who are calling us, say, I need you to walk this house because we're doing the shades and we want you to provide them. And then some of our best partners are actually integrators who also are our competitors now, because a lot of integrators try to sell shades,
Right.
but it's not easy. And so, they learn that sometimes the hard way. And so I've probably told you before, we stay good friends with everybody. I never, if integrators want to do their own shades or whatever, I don't speak poorly of them. I work with them and let them know, hey, if you change your mind, we're here. If there's anything you don't do, outdoor shade, any specialized funky shades, things like that, we could just do those. And I try to gain their trust that way. And hopefully one day they'll see that it's more lucrative for them to partner with a window treatment professional like us.
It's interesting when you mentioned the retail client. I'd imagine a lot of those are projects that are finished. So, it's kind of a different experience coming into maybe a home that's already in, as opposed to a GC where you're working throughout the course of construction, from bidding to, throughout the course. What separates some of the GCs you work with when you look at their operation? What are things that GCs do to put you in a position to be successful as a trade partner?
So one being, they hold the other trades accountable. Like I mentioned, they manage the job. I know that sounds like given, but
Doesn't happen.
it's not
Yeah.
easy. It doesn't happen always. Another, again, this can sound corny, but listening. So again, I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with a lot of GCs over the years, and look, Brad, what our custom home builder builds, a normal custom home builder builds what, 1, maybe 2 homes a year. A bigger outfit with, a few different superintendents, as a custom home builder, a really successful one is building 3, 4, 5 homes a year. Some of the, really big guys maybe are doing 10 to 15 a year. And those are very few that are doing that many custom homes. I'm on, like, I don't know, 200 a year. Since
Hmm.
our projects are so small, I'm on a new custom home at least once a day.
Hmm.
We're also going to homes that are already done and doing retrofit stuff, that too. But just on the custom home, brand new home end, I'm in so many homes with so many different details and nuances, and that's what, as a sub, that's part of what the value we bring is. Even if I have custom home builders who tell me, I've been doing this for 40 years. I built over 300 homes. And I'm not going to say to them, well, I did over 300 custom homes just last year. And I've been doing this 27 years. I'm not going to be a jerk and say that, but I have to try to portray to them that, hey, you might run into some things that you've never run into when it comes to shades, especially motorized shades. And we've run into them, we've messed them up, and we've got it, and we've learned how to get it right. So now that we've done all that trial and error, you get to learn from our mistakes, and we could come in and do this well if you just listen to me instead of telling me, all right, here's what you're going to do. I always tell them, nicely. That's like going to the doctor and saying, my shoulder hurt. I want rotator cuff surgery. Like, no, you go to the doctor, have them diagnose it. They make a suggestion. You get a second opinion, but you don't go to, well, I know that some people probably do go to their doctors and say, this is the surgery I need, or I want this prescription, exactly. If you're bringing us into a project, it's because not just because you want some shades. Like I said, we can get shades anywhere. You want someone who's seen this window, this setup a bunch of times, worked in this climate for a long time, and can make some really good suggestions. Now, I'm not saying, they have to do what I say, because I'm just there to suggest, educate their client. But yeah, listening, I know this was a really long answer to say listening, but listening is huge. And I wish more GCs and designers did listen, because, again, we're not trying to take over the project, but we have some valuable insight that we can share.
How early do you like to be involved in a project?
So there's no limit. The earlier, the better. The projects that go the smoothest are the ones that people call me up on while they're drafting the plan. That way,
Hmm.
the architect can, say, okay, this window is facing due west. They're going to get slaughtered here by this sun. But I don't want to mess up my roof line. What can we do? What can I hide in the trusses? So the earlier, the better. I've never been brought into a project and said, it's too early for us now. We're always able to offer insight. And again, sometimes they'll lay out the plan, tell me, hey, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. And I could say, oh, just a couple months ago, we did a house just like this. Here's what we did. This is what the homeowner really liked. This is what they said, we wish we could have done it a little differently. So, yeah, the earlier, the better. That way we can, we want it to truly be a custom home. And look, it's not like I'm charging, you call me 100 times. We're not charging anything. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that. I'm popular, but back up, run that video off the hook. But we're not charging anything until we sell shades. So my advice is free. My insight is free. So I always recommend getting balls as early as possible.
It's interesting because, as you were speaking through that, you know, the value bringing on early are so many layers. For example, we do a lot of modern construction, which you've been involved in, Eric. And when you're working in modern construction, it's very common that you can do a lot of shade pockets, right? You have automated shades, you have shade pockets. If someone wants blackout, again, you're trying to build pockets coming down the window or down the wall too, so that you can truly black it out, because you always have a setback based on the depth of the window. So if you're not building, call it a soffit or at least like an enclosure there, even if you're putting black down shades, light can still get around the sides. So as you're looking at that, and that comes into truss layout, because if we can design the trusses depending on which way the trusses are running, it makes it a lot easier for us in the field, for our framer, to have those trusses already built according to it. And then we can just box it out for you. So, how does that, as you think about that, I know that's come a long way with BIM modeling and some of our architects, but not everyone's thinking at that level. But I can tell you from me, the builder, having you involved early makes it a lot easier for our field team to go through and make these changes without creating a lot of extra costs and change orders for the client.
Yeah, I really think, Brad, once you get like a window treat there, again, I'm speaking specifically from window treatment provider. Once you get a good window treatment provider involved early, there's no going back, because I know all builders have been at the stage, because I've been there with them, where, we're standing in a home, the client's already living there, and they've got a window, and they are trying to find a way to cover it. because all they care about is the heat or the privacy. And the architecture, I'm sorry, the architect or the designer are standing there and saying, don't mess this up. We planned this to look like this. I don't want to interfere with the aesthetic. And then that's a whole battle. So if we can plan for that ahead of time, it makes everybody's job easier. So yes, more and more architects and builders are getting those things handled ahead of time, getting those questions addressed ahead of time, letting us meet with the homeowner way ahead of time. So many times I meet with homeowners and they think it's too early, and we lay out their set of plans and we start talking about everything, and immediately they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad we talked about this." So yeah, it's taken a while, but more and more builders and architects are thinking about that ahead of time, and that's just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I think back over my experiences I've seen, whether it's a very traditional home, like in a traditional home where you have a ton of trim. I'm doing this with on a current project now. You have a ton of trim down this hallway, and if you have, shade pockets built in, well, the issue is, what does that look like where you have crown jogging all over the place, right, around these openings? And then maybe in that scenario, you're like, okay, well, maybe we do like a surface mount one just right over the header of the window, as opposed to trying to do a pocket one because it doesn't really match the integrity of the home. Whereas maybe I'm doing a modern build that's not going to have crown molding. It's very flat, clean, tight, and then we can do that. But it still goes back to, a lot of times in our modern construction, those roof lines are really tight, right? And so as you're installing the mechanical and you're putting in lighting and everything has to line up, it makes a huge impact when we can have you involved consulting on that, not just for budgets of the actual shades themselves, but also, the functionality and aesthetic that the architect's looking for.
Yeah, and especially now with slope ceilings, that's a big thing now in modern homes. It used to just be, for more traditional type stuff, but now, it's not just rectangles and boxes. Now, architects are adding elements of design in the ceiling line. So we get a lot of sloped ceilings over straight windows. Well, how are those pockets going to fit in there? That takes a lot of planning. So it's crucial when you have details like that we get involved ahead of time. And we can help get those pockets to be as hidden as possible. Even when you're doing like a TNG ceiling and you have this beautiful wood on your ceiling, you don't want to mess it up with some, boxes or pockets that look like afterthoughts. So, that detail, it is crucial to get that squared away, no pun intended, ahead of time.
Where does that mentality come from? Your mentality of abundance as opposed to scarcity. And you mentioned that, you're not going to burn bridge. Sometimes, for many of your projects, you're coordinating with the integrator, the automation, and now they become your competitor. So one that maybe you serviced and partnered with now is essentially replacing you. Where's that mentality come from, and how have you been able to maybe, leverage that?
Um, I mean, part of it's probably insecurity, right? So I'm not good enough. So I gotta just outwork everybody else and grind and work my butt off. I know you're no stranger to that. And two, probably pops its head in and wanting to be liked by everybody. Anyone who's ever met me can tell you, I am not an aggressive guy. I'm not a fighting guy. Anyone who's worked for me now can tell you, I don't yell guys. I'm just not like that. I rather get along with people out there. And hope. I could say, oh, it's strategic. I'm being nice to them, so they'll come back to me. No, I'm being nice to them because they're human beings and they have families and kids, and I want to be able to look my daughter in the eye at night and let her know that I was a decent human being all day. And I like to put my head on my pillow and sleep, knowing that I was honest with everybody. But I've worked for people in this industry that couldn't say that. They were good business people and they were ruthless. But I would think like, how do they sleep at night? And I've had to work with them, and I've had trouble sleeping at night because I done things and had to lie to clients, instead of being honest because it couldn't be honest and my boss wouldn't let me be honest. And those are some of the worst times of my life. My stomach would be in knots. I wouldn't want to work out or do anything. It was just so depressing. So I just had a drive to say, no matter what, I'm gonna at least first and foremost strive to be a decent human being. Treat people with respect. Know, yeah, this guy's my competitor, but he's just trying to make a living. Um, I don't want to stoop to the point of depriving someone else of that. I'm not, better than anybody else. I just it as I treat people, again, an old cliche, I treat people how I wanna be treated. And sometimes they come back and they work with us even though they were a competitor before. Sometimes they try leaving and doing it on their own.
Mhm.
Our best trade partners when it comes to integrators, our best ones are guys who did try to do shade themselves. The guys who never tried shades, in the back of their mind, they're always thinking, I could really do this, but it's convenient to have Eric do it. But one day I'm going to do it and I'm going to just rake up the cash, because cool, they think I'm driving a Ferrari or something. Um, but, then they go out and try it, and then if they fail, and again, I'm never rooting for anybody to fail, I just leave the door open, and those guys and or girls who come back, those are our best because they know it's not easy, they know it's hard, and I tell them the same thing, I'm like, "Look, the reason we're so good at shades and what's helped me to excel at shade, it's not because 'cause I'm just smarter than you, it's not because 'cause I'm act to the learning shades. It's because I've been doing 27 years and I messed up way more. I made way more mistakes than you could ever make. And I had to learn from them. So unless you're ready to put in 27 years of just doing shades all day, every day and messing up a lot, you're never going to catch up to me. So just, take advantage of my mistakes. Let's partner up and figure out a way we can make a relationship that works for the both of us. I apologize if some of my answers are long-winded. I get, like, caught up and where I'm said and so
No, absolutely, you should. I mean,
Mhm.
because you're the expert, right, Eric? I mean, you're speaking about something. To your point, you spent 27 years. I mean, these are very thoughtful responses because you live. Eric today is a lot different than 27 years ago. Eric, right? About how you communicate with people, how you run your business. As you mentioned, concessions you're willing to make, clients you're willing to work for, positions you're willing to put yourself in. I mean, you learn from that, and you're like, hey, I don't want to do that. I mean, you made this comment about sleeping at night, and when you say that, I can relate to that. It's not about being moral superiority over somebody. It's just, at your heart, you have a reputation you care about. You're not looking to burn bridges. And so you're going to operate your business a lot different with that mentality. Just knowing, hey, I may take a loss here, I may take a win here, but at the end of the day, I'm peaceful with, my day's work when I go back to my family.
Yeah, I've seen other, people in my business, in, your business and everywhere in the construction business. I've seen people lie and cheat and steal to get, a job where maybe they'll make an extra few grand. Is it, at the end of the day, at the end of the year, that extra 5,000, $10,000 you made that you had to lie to somebody about, that you had to cheat somebody else out of it, that you have to do something underhanded. What was it? I mean, was it really worth it? I've never seen it be worth it. Um, I've just always lived by. I rather, I wouldn't do anything I wouldn't want my daughter to see me doing. I want to be proud of what I've done when I finish a day's work and be able to tell her, hey, now you got to go to school, you got to work hard, you got to make good decisions. So I always try to keep that in mind. But to be honest, again, I'm just not that ruthless. I'm not that conniving. I'm not. I'm just like, yeah, I'm just trying to make it by just like the rest of us.
I love that though. What are, some of the product, variations that are out there, options that clients have now, that they may not realize?
Well, a lot of clients, especially in our market, a lot of clients don't think about outdoor shades.
Mhm.
And with good reason. They've always been kind of problematic. They've always been this thing that looks great on day one, but then after one monsoon season out here, it just looks bad. It can be very dangerous out there. And there's a lot of, I don't know why, but when companies pop up overnight, it's mostly outdoor shade companies more than indoor shade companies. And they do really poor work and they're usually gone in 2 years. And then clients are calling some other company, hey, can you come fix these? Or no, I got to buy new ones or I spent a lot of money. So I know a lot of people have been burned with exterior shades, but the technology has grown immensely. Uh, a lot of these shades now are made to withstand hurricane type winds.
Hmm.
And we're able to span, 30, 40 feet widths with one big shade. So the technology is great with those, and they're going to block a lot more heat. They're also, you could put them on the end of the patio. So a lot of people get to enclose their patio with these motorized shades and use their patio more often. That was something that really blew up for us during COVID and after. Just people finally um, taking advantage of their outdoor spaces. So many times, I'm sure in the videos you post, the landscaping is just breathtaking. But us being out here, we know a lot of those clients don't even ever step foot. They just go into the pool and come back in the house, and they don't enjoying it. But I really
Yeah.
feel since COVID, people have been concentrating more on building ramadas and building, fire pits and places to sit and places to eat outside, places, and I've seen more heaters than ever before because people are going out in the winter nights and taking advantage of the chilly nights by just putting up some heaters there, and the outdoor shades can help drop those and lock the heat into that patio.
Hmm.
Also, during COVID, we did a lot of enclosed patios with those shades for people who wanted to let their pets get some fresh air, but were afraid of bobcats or coyotes coming and taking it. So they can enclose their patio with outdoor shades and let their 5 cats out without having to worry. We even, I did not coin this phrase, but a lot of our clients and designers use the phrase catio. So by enclosing the
Hmm.
patio to let their cats out, that's their little catio. Exterior is a big thing. Solar powered is becoming a big thing. More and more of the shades. Now, this is more for, like you were speaking of, a home that is already lived in, and we're kind of adding things after the fact. And there might be an area where it's hard to get power to. More and
Hmm.
more both outdoor and indoor shades are offering solar options. And here in sunny Arizona, we could take advantage of that. And the solar plates, they used to be the size of like a dictionary, but they've gotten smaller and smaller, and it's a little bit easier to hide. So that's something that has been, real helpful in getting people into automated shades. For us, our big thing has always been automated shades. At this point, we're like, uh, what is it? Automatic windows on a car. Every car used to be a crank, and the automatic windows were an extra. Now, no cars are made with a crank. We're very close to no window treatments being made with a chain. Pretty soon, I would say with less than 10 years, every shade is going to be automated pretty much.
That's incredible. I mean, you get some good feedback there. I know the outdoor shades are something that a lot of our customers have requested for a lot of different reasons, right? They can enclose that. I mean, we don't, even if we don't have maybe the bug issue that you probably see like in the Midwest or other climates that are dealing with a ton of mosquitoes and bugs that come in. The reality is we still have a lot of clients that have pets. That's why they have enclosed dog runs, because if they have little dogs, little cats, there's birds of prey out here. You have, as you mentioned, the bobcats love to seize on them and the coyotes. And so something, that again, you're looking to bring value to your clients, Eric. And there's a lot of ways to do that, through the product availability as it, as technology increases.
And some of our clients out here, let's face it, are homeowners slash clients are spoiled. They've been out here so long, they see 2 mosquitoes in a month. That's it. And they've got to lock down the house. And I'm like, aren't you originally from Chicago? But they're just so used to, like you said, no insects, no bugs. But every once in a while, after like a long rainy, monsoon seasons, look at a few mosquitoes. People will freak out and they want to shut everything down. So that's fine. That helps our sales when it comes to the outdoor shades.
How do you train your people to be an arm of you, to really represent the Modern Shade brand?
I don't know. I'm open to. Can we take when we take calls? I'm open to suggestions. This is like the part of me. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. When I started Modern Shade, I had a business partner. He was more the entrepreneur. I was just the guy that's sold and installed shade, things like that. Um, so I've had to learn this on the fly, and still to this day, we're 10 years in now. I still let employees know. I'm like, hey, I'm doing. So I'm sorry if, I'm not doing this perfect. I'm just trying my best. So I've And here's the interesting part, Brad, and maybe you feel the same way. I'd love to hear how you feel. I feel like these past 10 years, being a business owner, I've learned more than any other time in my life. But it's not only for my business, it's just I've learned and grown more as a human being. It's I'm a parent, but it's totally different. And a lot of guys are like, I want to be my own boss. Okay, that's cool. But do you want to be other people's boss? That's a whole nother thing. So, starting out with 3 employees, then 10, then 50. Now we're at like 20, 22 employees. And all of those personalities in the office, out in the field, um, are guys as opposed to girls, or I should say men as opposed to women, um, and how they get along with each other, how people in the field interact with people in the office. This is way harder than anything I've had to learn for window treatments. Just how to manage all these personalities. And you start off thinking this is going to be a place I want people to not dread coming to every Monday. I want people to enjoy it. So trying to learn how to create that has been the most challenging thing ever, and I'm still learning. So to answer your question, well, I tried to see the best in my people, and I tried to gear their responsibilities and their goals toward that. Like if we have someone in the office who is great on the computer, but not so good with on the phone or dealing with people face to face, I might scale back his or her responsibilities of face to face and have them concentrate more on the technical and data working. If I have installers who get along great. My install lead who get along great with builders and guys out in the field, but maybe not so much with 90-year-old Mrs. Johnson at home who we're just putting up two little shades for. Maybe we stick him more on the construction jobs, and we stick this other guy here who's just great and grandmas love him and he got the baby face or something. Who knows? But I try to play towards my people's strength, and I try really, 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 really hard to listen to them. Just like I talked about builders listening to me, I want to listen to them. Are they the type of person who wants to have a job and be in one company for the next 30 years? Or are they the type of person who is, it could be a lady who we have in our sales department who wants to be a designer ultimately. So I will keep that open and let her know, hey, I'll open your eyes to the world of interior design, introduce you to designers we work with, and get you connections. And one day when you're ready to fly off on your own, Godspeed. Or it could be an installer who wants to start an integration company or be an electrician. And, I'll tailor his jobs and his goals more toward that, knowing that, he won't be around forever, but I want to get the most out of him while he's here. And I want to build him up to be the most valuable person he could be. I want, my goal is to retain as many employees as possible, but I want my people to, when they leave, I have a good relationship with a lot of them. I stay in touch with a lot of them, even ones that, went to work somewhere else. That's important to me because I want our people to feel like people and not like they're just a commodity that I'm using to get shades up. So that's what I'm trying to do. Am I successful? I don't know. I'll tell you in another 10 years. We'll have a chat.
We've been pretty successful, from my experience, having worked with you, Eric. But, out of all the people I've interviewed, I think, 330 plus now. It's funny, you made a comment, you said, because you often hear people that, go into entrepreneurship, they want to be their own boss. They want to create their own schedule, which, anyone that's done it understands there's limitations to that because the reality is like, you don't get to shut it off. But what's interesting, you said, do you really want to be others people's boss? And I thought that was an interesting, aspect to being an entrepreneur because there's no doubt that maybe your strong suit, you have different strong suits, you have different weaknesses, but when you own the company, you have to make, even if you're only touching things lightly in different departments, you still have to have a good understanding of accounting and financials and, client, being in front of the client and, business development and marketing and, all the operations side and how you build manufacturers and vendor relationships. Like you have all these things you have to touch, even if you're hiring that out, but you have to be familiar with it. But more importantly, there has to be touch points with your employees. And I think that's really hard that many of us didn't understand, going into, either business ownership or construction.
Yeah. I can't even get started on all the things I didn't understand, both on the business side and with the personnel side. So I'm still learning. Having a business partner, it was helpful because I didn't get involved in a lot of I just learned what a P&L statement was like 2 years ago. And that's after holding a business that does millions of dollars of business. So I'm learning some of this stuff still now. And that's why I let my people sometimes, especially if like someone in our accounting department, we had someone take over our accounting department, or it was changed there like a year ago. And the woman who we brought in, she's still amazed at how little I know. She at first she didn't believe me, and then now she knows that I really do need her and I rely on her. And while yes, I stay somewhat involved, I can't get caught down in the weeds of the numbers or the weeds of the installation department or the weeds of shipping and receiving. So I really, when we hire people, we always promote from within. They kind of start at the lowest level that we have in that department, so to speak, and work their way up. And that's been the most successful for us. And I let people know that I'm trusting them to do their job. I'm not going to micromanage. I don't have the time to micromanage. Like you said, I'm touching those departments, but for the most part, I'm giving them the trust right off the bat. And I'm not even making them earn it. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to give you. I'm going to trust you, and then you either can succeed with it or you could mess it up, and then we'll have to maybe make a change from there." But I'm starting with giving them full trust right off the bat, and just see how they handle it.
Where do you find new hires? I mean, you mentioned that as you promote to different management positions and as the company's growing, you can promote within. But that entry level person, as you're filling those positions, how do you find them?
Wow. I mean, for a long time, we were just using Craigslist, just getting people off of there and just finding a good person. I never wanted to hire anyone that worked for one of my competitors. I never wanted to, be like one of those guys who could, did he poach him? Did he not? So we just always tried to hire good people and train them up from there. And, sometimes you get a person who interviews great and you hire them. And then after a month, you're like, oh, this is not going to work
Mhm.
out. Other times you hire them and they're there for, 8, 9 years. So it's been basic stuff. It was Craigslist for a while. Now I think, my team is using Indeed to get resumes, and that's been,
Mhm.
more professional, more helpful. But also a lot of word of mouth. So for example, I do, now I don't poach people, but right now I think I have 5 employees that all used to work at Topgolf in Scottsdale.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so we like maybe in our 3rd year or so, we had a company party at Scottsdale. At that time, I don't know, maybe we had 8 or 9 employees, maybe 10. But we had a company party at Scottsdale, and everybody, went to Topgolf, and, Monterey was treating for the day. It was gonna be everyone hanging out. We're getting food and drinks and playing golf. I, of course, had appointments that morning, so I went to my appointments. By the time I got to Topgolf, everybody was in a good mood, for one reason or another. And all I could hear was, "Our server is so cool. We're gonna hire her to work for us." And I'm like, we're not gonna hire some server at Topgolf just off. We're not even hiring right now. And the server comes over. Of course, she's beautiful. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But now even the girls liked her. And the girls were like, no, she's awesome. And she's so smart. And she's going to work for her. And I was like, all right, whatever. I thought they were joking. That was a Friday. Monday, I'm coming back to the office from an appointment. And sure enough, she's sitting there in an interview with my business partner. That was like 7 years ago. Now, that girl who was our server and knew nothing about shades is our top salesperson, Alyssa, who you guys, she was in the helicopter with you a few
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
guys won
yeah,
the two hits, yeah.
yeah.
So she's still with us to this day. And since she has brought on my operations manager, Roxanne, was the party planning person at Topgolf. Our front desk gal, Lexi, was another server at Topgolf. One of my installers, Trevor, he was a busboy at Top. So they just, when we had openings, they were like, oh, I know this person who, we used to work at Top Golf and they're great. Okay. And that's worked out really well. But unfortunately, and I always ask when we do have an opening, I ask the whole team, I'm like, anybody know anybody who needs a job? And some of them will raise their hands and I'm like, and you'll vouch for them. And then some hands go down. But I always love to hire people who, come as a referral. But, you got to be lucky sometimes. I do, total side note, but I do think a lot of our success, my success, I think a lot of everybody's success sometimes is luck. Yeah, you got to be prepared and yeah, you got to work hard, but sometimes you get lucky and it works out and it's awesome.
I love that you share that. Good thing Top Golf probably doesn't listen to this, but no, in seriousness, it's funny. I had there was one of my former guests that is out of Texas, and they were in the plumbing and mechanical service business, right? And as you can imagine, plumbing repair, AC repair, especially in Texas or Phoenix in the summer. I mean, this is a hot commodity, right? Like people, pricing goes up for anyone that's doing that in those times of months because you can't live without AC in those climates. With that being said, it's very technical still. But what was interesting, their strategy was he was like, I always hired servers, or waitresses, waiters, people that worked in the restaurant industry, in the food industry, because these are people that are really good in front of the customer. They're dealing in high conflict resolution. You're dealing with a lot of personalities. We all know inherently there are some people that will never be happy no matter what, complain about their meal, their food, whatever it is. And so he would see that communication. He's like, look, for my company, I needed people that could be client facing, that could communicate with the client because they're in their home, they're fixing a toilet, they're fixing mechanical. And if I could teach them, the technical side, they're going to fit culturally. And I think that's really important because at any job, you have to have a level of sophistication, right? Like, for you at Modern Shade, for me at AFT, I mean, we're going to have that. But to that point, one thing we can't teach are people that are passionate about their job, people that care, people that take care of the client, communicate well, that represent you, Eric. And, your team does that very well. And that just goes to show you that, when you're looking at building from culture, they can come from a lot of different areas. And to your point, they don't have to have 30 years experience working for your competitor.
I rather not because I'm not trying to, speak bad of anybody, but you hire someone who has all that experience, they're going to come with baggage. They're going to come, well, this is the way I used to do it at this place. This is the way. It just almost never works out. I rather just get a good person who has a good work ethic and is, decent human being. So that way it helps with chemistry. No one's feeling passed over, bringing in someone more experienced to be their new boss. And again, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but so far that's what's worked for us. And one thing I thought you were going to say about the whole hiring a server thing, and then I thought you were going to list as you were talking about how to talk to the customer. They also, in my experience, have learned to take a little abuse.
Yeah, for
Eat a
sure.
little crow, and we
Yeah.
got to do that sometimes, even if we didn't mess up. How many
Yeah.
times has I've had someone lose it on me for something we didn't do wrong. And again, I'm the kind of guy, I'm not going to fight with them. I'm just going to shut my mouth, tuck my tail between my legs, be quiet, let them get out whatever they need to get out, listen for what the real problem is, and then go back and try to solve it. But if I, am going to stand my ground and be a tough guy and you don't talk to me like that, like, that's okay, great. Now I stood up for myself to, one of Brad's best clients who, yeah, maybe this guy's a little pain in the neck, but it's going to get back to you and you're going to be like, all right, I can't have Eric talk to my clients like that, whether he's in the right or wrong. You just can't. So, another important thing that I do try to preach to my people is sometimes, swallow your pride, live to fight another day. And you never know. I know this gets said a lot too. You never know what someone's dealing with. Just because this guy is building a $25 million house and he has 10 Ferraris and he seemed like he's, got the world in his hand and he could do anything he wants. You don't know what's going on in his personal life. You don't know if, he just found out one of his parents are dying. You don't know if, his wife is leaving. You don't know what's going on in someone's life. So I always ask my guys, hey, yeah, that client, maybe he's a little jerk, or maybe that guy, cut you off while you're in a company van. Instead of zooming up and riding him in a company van, not that that's ever happened or I've had this with any of my guys, but I let them know, giving people a little grace. Think about, give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just got the worst news they've heard in 10 years. just let it go. You're safe as long as no one's trying to harm you. You're safe. You're okay. It's some words. Go home. Have a good night's sleep. Come back. We'll have breakfast for you in the morning or something. So that's another thing I do try to teach my guys. And as you were saying, I feel like people in the service industry, they learn to grow that tough skin and being able to let things roll off their back a little better than most.
It's interesting. I mean, you made a point, Eric, that I didn't even think about. In a way, you're representing me too, right? I think about a lot of my team at AFT that, I have, but how my trade partners that I'm working with on a regular basis, how they communicate with customers, it's a reflection of me too. And so it's something that it's so long reaching, and for you to, have that mentality and care. And that's why you're one of our trusted trade partners. And, you do such a good job and have such a good reputation in town, because there is something to be said about that. Is, it is really hard, that when it's not your fault, to just, hey, look, we're not here to find fault. We're just here to find a solution. And we're not worried about who's right or wrong. It's about getting it right, the project. And, it's not very common with a lot of people, especially in construction, because I find a lot of trade partners are, can be pretty defensive when there's no need to be.
Especially when times are good. When there's plenty of work go around, it's
Yes.
real easy for guys to have a chip on their shoulder and like, well, if you're talking back to me, how many jobs I have there, and like and lose a relationship, lose a client. And I see that oh so often. And I think back, I'm like, nobody was doing that in '09. Nobody was doing that back then. I'm like,
Yeah.
and you never know when you're going back to, when things get lean again, the people who are willing to take a little abuse are going to stick around. The guys who, and it doesn't matter, if it's a builder, a sub, anybody, the guys who, have to stand up for themselves and puff their chest out and, are not going to take any stuff. Those guys, they're not going to make it when things get real lean. You're going to have tough skin. You're going to have to be solution oriented, like you said. That's, if I have a client who has a problem, because look, sometimes problems pop up. Sometimes, maybe there was a misunderstanding. So if I have to get on with someone and or meet someone in person, some of them will come at me full force, like 100 miles an hour. And the first thing I gotta like back them down and be like, hey, Mr. So and so, I'm going to take this back and I'm going to give you exactly what you want. And I'm not going to charge you a dime. We're going to just start from scratch. So all I'm here to find out is, how we want to change this and what your needs are, like we're meeting day one. And usually when I say that, because they're thinking, oh, he's going to charge me. He's going to say it was this guy's fault. He's going to point the finger at this guy. But once I tell them we're taking full responsibility, we're taking full financial responsibility, we're going to fix everything. We can do anything they want. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't be saying all this out loud. But once I tell them that, they usually calm down, and then they're more apt to, okay, let's get together and come up with a solution. So that's been, going back to your very first question, that's been the thing that I think has been the most beneficial for us, is the fact that we really do mean when I say, hey, Bob, at the end of the day, I just want you to be happy. That's really what we do mean. If we keep, it sounds so simple, but if we keep that as the goal, is at the end of the day, this client is going to be happy. And it could be a small little job, it could be, you had us come in for some guy to do 5 shade. Now that we have to redo 2 of these shade, we're not going to make any money. We'll be lucky if we break even. The big picture is he's happy. He's going to tell Brad how happy we made him. Brad's going to be like, all right, I can keep using Eric on these jobs. And now I'm, worrying about this again, going back to like the $5,000 I just lost here. I'm going to work with Brad on all these huge, amazing projects for years to come. We always keep that big picture in mind.
Yeah, and it's not being short-sighted. It just, you see the big picture, and I think you've built your business. I've done the same way. That, why die on this hill you don't need to? It's like not looking at today. It's looking in the future. What brought you to Phoenix?
So uh I'm from the East Coast, born in New York, raised in New Jersey. And then right about when I got married, so it was like 2005. My wife and I at the time, we were trying to buy our first home. And man, New Jersey, New York, it was just, at that time, it was the housing bubble. We just couldn't afford anything. we couldn't even afford stuff we didn't want. That's how bad it was. We were like, who would live there? And we look at the price. We're like, oh, not us. Dude. We can't even
Not
afford to live. It's
us.
astonishing. So like, we gotta get out. And I didn't want to, the places we could afford were 2-hour commute away from work. So
Yeah,
nobody wanted to
brutal.
walk. Plus, my wife at the time, this is, uh, it's a little actor, but her dream was always to just work in Manhattan. She loved riding the train into Manhattan. She loved the hustle and bustle of New York. She loved it until 9/11. She was, in Manhattan
Mhm.
then. After that day, she had PTSD, so she
Mm.
wanted to get out of there, and then she started working in Jersey, and then just get out away from big cities in general. So before we started a family, we started to look around. Being from the East Coast, all of our families in Florida. We didn't want to live down there. We looked at California; it was even more expensive. We looked at Vegas because we like to, vacation there, hang out there, but it wasn't really set up for a family. And somebody who I was working with at a window treatment store there, he goes, "Oh, you should check out my hometown where I grew up. It's called Tempe, Arizona." I was like, "I never heard of it." He goes, "Oh, it's beautiful. We just built a lake there, and we just out there. Wait, back up. What? You built a lake? How you built a lake?" And he's like, "Yeah, and it's beautiful." And so I was like, "All right." So her and I flew out here for 5 days, and we are like, "Yeah, this is cool. Let's do it." And by 2007, we had moved out here, and her family followed her. So her parents are out here, and her sister's out here, and her brother-in-law is my head of purchasing. So he still works for me. Um, yeah, again, just happened to be, we just kind of stumbled on it, and one of the best decisions of my life. And I love it here. And, now I'm no longer married, but I'm raising my daughter here, and she loves
Mhm.
it here. But, her mentality is exactly opposite. I grew up in Jersey. It was freezing. I wanted a sunny place. She wants to, I said, "What do you want to go to college?" One is Japan. I don't know. Amongst you is always someplace cold. All the Arizona native kids, they'll want to go to colder climates. So I'm not ready for that yet. She's only 13, but
It goes
yeah, getting back to
fast.
the phone. Yeah, it does. But yeah, I'm very happy that I wound up moving out here.
How do you get into window shades, like window coverings?
So back when I was like a freshman in college, I was at Rutgers, and I was working part time at Macy's in the luggage department. And I just working in retail, I kind of got used to people coming who are recruiters who are trying to steal you. And this one guy came in once, and he just typical recruiter, and he asked me questions, and I gave him my little spiel. And then he wound up giving me his card, and he was a recruiter for a company out of Canada called Blinds to Go. And I knew nothing about window treatments, but they were willing to pay me $8 an hour. So I was like, "What? I'm gonna be rich." And do 3 days of paid training at $8 an hour. I
Yeah,
was like, "Awesome." So I was just
so
like, "All
fun.
right," and they'll work around my school schedule. And so that's how I started. And I got into window treatments there. From there, just meeting people. I went to work in the window treatment department at Home Depot. And then by that time, I was floating through school, barely attending classes, not really paying attention. I just had no aim. So I was like, well, I kept making more and more money doing window treatments and working my way up the ladder. Then I went to this other business it's like a third generation owner. So a family business, much more high end, much more custom. And I kind of just settled in there and became an assistant manager there and became an installer there. Always thinking, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to do something, but this will pay the bills for now. And then next thing I know, it was time to move out here. I said, well, let me find a job. I applied for a few jobs out here, got a job out here with a family owned business here. And yeah, then eventually met the guy who became my business partner, and we started Modern Shade. So again, just by dumb luck, you know, the funny thing is, and when I get emotional and, I'm at like Christmas party and give them toast, I always mention to guys how you never know what's around the corner. And the example I give is when I applied for a job at Macy's, that I met with their HR, and the top job they had was in windows. And they were like, now this is back when I was young. They're like, "Oh, young man, you're going to rack up the women's shoes. It's a commission based thing. You're going to make so much money. You're so, sweet and blah, blah, blah. And, I was 19, 20 years old. And, and I was like, all right, great. This will be awesome. And then like they call me back the next day. They're like, oh, so sorry. We don't have an opening in women's shoes, but we have an opening in luggage. And it's not commission based, but who knows? You can always move around later or something like that. And I was like, all right, whatever. It's a job. And, at the time I was a little disappointed, but yes, I took a job, a position making less money. But if I took that job in women's shoes, I would be on the podcast with you. I would have never met that recruiter. I would have never learned about window treatments. I would have never moved to Phoenix. I would have never met my wife, who I met at home, my ex-wife, who I met at Home Depot. My daughter would not be born. Like all of these
It's
things
wild.
came from something that originally disappointed me. I'm like, oh, I could have made more money in women's shoes. Heck, who knows? I could still be selling women's shoes in Short Hills, New Jersey right now. But because I didn't, just say, forget it. I was like, all right, this is the best in possible. I'll work in the luggage department. And I didn't just coast. Like I said, when a recruiter came in, I gave him my best pitch. And I always try to tell that to my guys. I was like, hey, look, you never know whose home you're going in. If you come in, put on your booties, speak to the homeowner professionally, speak to the builder with respect, don't throw him under the bus, and work real hard. You never know who you're going to impress. Maybe that builder is looking for the new superintendent and he sees you and yeah, you leave modern shade, but now you have a whole new career. So I always let people know, if you're going to do a job, do it the best you can, because you never know what that could lead to. Some of it again just comes down to luck, and I do feel so lucky for those things that have happened in my life that have led me to this very point here. And it's just so weird how just one little change, and all of a sudden, my daughter doesn't exist. You and I never met each other. It's just crazy how I apologize if I'm getting too philosophical,
No,
too
not at
but
all.
it's just it always amazes me how those little things that happen have that butterfly effect and ripple throughout someone's life and change so many lives.
It's wild to think about that. And, you referenced luck a few times, and I think it's, in fairness to you, a humble approach. I mean, the reality is a lot of luck's created. A lot of it's just, perseverance and hard work and determination. And, you put yourself in opportunities to be successful in it. The path was created. I think there's a lot to that. I think philosophy, philosophy, I think we align, a lot, you and I. Eric, I mean, you're incredible. Just personality, drive, the company you built, the reputation you have. I mean, again, that's not by accident. These things don't happen, vacuum. I mean, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. I know maybe we look from afar and be like, oh, Modern Shades has been successful from day one, but there's pitfalls and work that go into this. So we appreciate the time you made for our audience today. What do you do for fun?
Um, well, now, again, it's gonna sound corny. I love spending time with my daughter.
Yeah,
I can't say it's
as
always
much as you
mutual,
can, man.
but
13 and
yeah,
it changes.
it goes fast, and I always let new parents know. And again, maybe you said this. I mean, I've heard it in a bunch of places. Now with social media, I hear so much stuff and I don't even remember where things come from. But the saying, you never know when the last time you're going to pick up your kid is.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
never know. And I always tell people, for sure. Now, don't get me wrong. I love now that my daughter and I can go to the movies together or go try a new restaurant together or go hiking together. But I still, we went hiking for the first time together last week. And I told her, hey, have you ever been up this trail before? And she said, no, I don't think so. I said, yeah, you have. I was like, I'll show you a picture. I carried you up this trail when you were like 6 months old in the baby Bjorn. So I
Baby
do
Bjorn.
those days a bit because I got tired of this and switching. It was North Mountain over here. And so eventually I got the baby Bjorn. I was like, oh, that's a little better. But I miss those days. So yes, spending time with her, going to the gym. So the older I get, the more I treasure my gym time, gym days. Um, I haven't played. I always love playing basketball. It's hard to find a game. When I go to the gym, it's either a 5-game wait or there's nobody
Yeah.
playing. Can't
Mhm.
wait. can we get it in between here somewhere? So that's a little tough, but I like you, I enjoy playing basketball. I don't play as much as I used to, which is probably a good thing because all the guys my age are ripping biceps and tendons and Achilles. So it's probably good. Maybe I should take it as like, someone's telling me like, hey, you're too old to get on that for it. Go walk on the treadmill on an incline or something. Which I've been, I never did cardio growing up. And now that time on the treadmill where I, put on my headphones and maybe listen to music, maybe watch a podcast or something like that and just zone out where I'm not having to make decisions, all day long. I enjoy that time very much. So that's a lot of fun. And I'm not a foodie or anything, but I love checking out all the restaurants that we have here now in Phoenix and Scottsdale. There's so many great places to go eat now and go hang out. And I really enjoy going out and just exploring the city. It's been exciting for me, not being a native here, but just moving here in '07 to see how far we've come now. Like, it's a total transformation. And I know, some bad stuff comes with it, but it's been exciting for me, especially now as someone who has a business who, I want my business to grow with the city and the
Mhm.
outlet grows. So, that's been great. So, and I like to participate in it. So by going out, I like to frequent, not that I don't enjoy, going to mass shows or something, but I like go to the new, just mom and pop owned
Mhm.
restaurant if I can, and helping those businesses and trying to encourage more of those to pop up because that's who we are. That's who you and I are. We're family owned businesses, and I do think there should be some balance because, like I said, I love the good mass shows. My daughter loves the Chipotle. If she could just eat a Chipotle and Chick-fil-A for the rest of her life, she would be set. So I know we need those places, but I like to frequent places that are locally owned as much as I can.
Well, Eric, you've been amazing. And again, I can't thank you enough for making time. So, for our audience, where can they find you?
So I guess I should have opened with that, right? I'm the owner of Modern Shape. So we are located in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you go to modernshade.net, that's our website. You can contact us through that. Um, we do have. I am trying to learn from you. Our social media presence is not great. That's another thing that's I'm trying to juggle. So we are on Instagram and a little bit on TikTok and Facebook. So we got to grow that presence a little more. But for now, if anyone's looking for us, you go to www.modernshade.net. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. We do have a beautiful showroom. We get compliments on it all the time. In the beginning, it was just from my parents, but now a lot more people compliment us on it. And we're right in the air park. So our offices are right across. Right now, we are looking directly at the bird's nest. While
Mhm.
that's getting all built up. So we're right there. So this is the time of year I become very popular. I get phone ringing off the hook. Hey, can I come park in your parking lot? So
Yeah.
um, we started getting those calls. But yeah, we cover all of Arizona. Our focus is the Valley, but we have jobs in Tucson. We have a lot of jobs in Flag, Sedona, Prescott right now. And for the right client, usually repeat clients, we do out of state stuff. We've done stuff in Utah and California. We did a big job in Oregon last year. So we are willing to go out of state if it makes sense for the client and for us. And who knows? One day maybe we might expand to other markets. I've gotten that request before, but right now we're really concentrating on the Valley and just trying to be the best trade partner we could be to you guys here.
Well, Eric, you've been amazing. Thanks for making time for our audience today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad. Had a great time.